Between the endless notifications, the constant flashing lights of our screens, the arguments, the opinions, and the endless loops of comparison, our modern baseline is pure exhaustion. The sheer volume of information we process in a single day creates severe decision fatigue. We are shedding our ability to hold a single quiet thought. Our attention is fractured, pulled outward by algorithms and anxieties, leaving us entirely at the mercy of external noise. People are desperate for stillness. And ironically, that search leads straight into the dark, intimidating folklore of a Hindu Mahavidya, goddess Baglamukhi. For centuries, she has carried a terrifying reputation. Popular mythology associates her with dark magic, revenge, and domination. She is depicted as a violent force summoned to paralyze enemies, stop their movements, and physically rip out their tongues. If we are already overwhelmed by the world, turning to a mythological figure of violent paralysis seems counterproductive. Ancient tantric practice, however, identifies the target of this paralysis as the practitioner's own consciousness. Baglamukhi's power was designed for an internal battlefield. The forces she paralyzes are located entirely within your own mind. This concept diagram represents the Sanskrit term Stambhana. Often translated as paralysis, this chaotic movement represents the restless human mind. In Tantra, Stambhana refers to a mid-air suspension. It is the active pausing of disturbance. It simply halts their fluctuation. Our default state is a machine of constant motion. We generate thought after thought, bouncing endlessly from a new fear to a new desire, draining our energy with every internal collision. Baglamukhi functions as the psychological mechanism that suspends the internal dialogue, clouding our judgment. Once her battlefield is understood as psychological, her most frightening visual symbols translate into specific shifts in perspective. Take the imagery of her gripping the tongue. Look at this diagram showing a standard behavioral loop. Gripping the tongue represents the achievement of control over our own uncontrolled expression. Today, the tongue is our digital footprint. The angry comment typed instantly, the emotional overreaction to a text, and the compulsive urge to vocalize every opinion. Then we have the color yellow. Watch as that immediate loop is broken by a solid block of color. Traditional iconography uses yellow to represent the peak of clarity and focused intelligence. When the mind reaches this state of focused intelligence, the friction of decision fatigue and emotional overload begins to dissipate. The noise stops dominating action. When that clarity hits, the ego begins to dissolve. Not violently and not permanently, it simply goes quiet. The false self requires constant reactions to survive. It feeds on argument, comparison, and fear. When the mind successfully stops reacting to external stimuli, that ego is starved of its fuel. This entire esoteric philosophy translates directly into a modern form of awareness training. We can call it the Baglamukhi principle. Before you walk into a high-pressure meeting, before you have a difficult conversation, or before you fire back an angry reply, take a deliberate pause. Close your eyes. Imagine a golden stillness forming around your thoughts. Let the mental dust settle. You are not fighting the thoughts or forcing them out. You are simply observing the debris drift downward, without reacting. There is one non-negotiable caveat to this practice. If you attempt to use this focused stillness to silence or harm someone else, the mechanism breaks entirely. True awareness and stillness simply cannot coexist with violence. The desire to harm another person requires ego and reaction, the exact chaotic elements this practice aims to eliminate. Baglamukhi is the goddess of interruption. In a society that demands your constant, frantic attention, she grants you the radical permission to simply stop. Silence represents the return of our awareness. Identify the loudest thought in your mind right now and consider what would happen if it were to halt for just one moment.